All right, folks. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining for day two. So we start off with the keynote from Parul. I'm sure you all know Parul. She's very famous. So let's do a quick intro. Parul, she's currently working as a data science evangelist at H2O.ai, which is a AutoML learning-based startup based out of California. Academically, she's an electrical engineer, having previously worked in the field of power distribution. She's also the founder of a nonprofit called as Women in Coding and Data Science, whose mission is to support and promote women and gender minorities in data science, machine learning, and the AI space. I'm sure all of you know her from her Kaggle post. She's also a Kaggle Grandmaster in the notebooks category, and she was one of LinkedIn's top voice in the software development category in 2019. So let's start with the Big Bang, Parul. Over to you.
Thank you, Snehit, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's joined in today. It's morning, a very bright morning in Hyderabad, India, from where I'm located. But of course, since this is virtual, I expect people must have joined it from all over India as well as the world. So I'll be quickly sharing my screen. So I hope my screen is clear and visible. Snehit,
Yes,
can I get a... Okay,
yes.
Thank you. So yeah, so since this is a keynote session, so I was thinking about what should be the apt topic to be presented here. I know there are going to be a lot of talks, and there have been a lot of talks yesterday about Python, and of course there will be talks about data science and AI. What I specifically wanted to present was how Python and data science itself is such a winning combination. And through this talk, I want to also sort of thank the entire Python community who has made it possible for so many people to foray into the space of data science and AI with little programming knowledge initially. And Python has actually made it possible for a lot of research to take place in this area because this has made coding so fun and so easy. So as we all know that businesses today are trying to realize or actually have realized the importance of data. And how do they realize the importance of data? It's by delving into it. And to actually extract those insights, you require a lot of tools. And Python is one of that predominant tool that is today used in the data science space. And there's a lot of reasons why Python today is so famous and so much used. And this will definitely be going over throughout this presentation. This presentation is mainly aimed at two kind of, you could say, people. One of them who are pro in Python, they are already been doing high-level coding, but they want to switch into the data science domain. So through this presentation, I would like to show them how Python makes it possible with the help of so many open source libraries. It really makes it easy, and especially if you are a Python developer, it's definitely very easy for you to switch. Again, this presentation should also interest people who are new to data science or who are new to Python, and they're looking for a programming language to actually switch into that domain. So for you, Python will be your best bet, that much I can say. So like Snehit has already introduced me, and I think he's already told you about all these things. I work at H2O.ai, which is again a startup, and it's headquartered in Mountain View, California, and we are into automated machine learning. So we try to automate the end-to-end machine learning process. So all these things have actually been gone over. I also write in my free time. I write about data science. I write about artificial intelligence by Python, and I mostly write on Medium. So if you're interested, you can read there, or I also write on my own website. I'll just quickly like to tell you about H2O.ai, and why I particularly want to mention it here is not because I work for the company, but because we create a lot of products. And out of that, H2O3 is an open source machine learning at scale products. So that's for distributed machine learning. It's completely open sourced. It's available on GitHub. And this is actually used when you have large amount of data and you want to perform machine learning. And it has all the leading algorithms in it. And it has APIs for Python, for R, and also has a web interface. So if you want to do machine learning, you can also try H2O. And we are a global organization. We work from almost all parts of the world, from India, from Singapore, of course, America, Sri Lanka also we started. So if you're interested in joining, you can look at the open position and can definitely apply. Snehit mentioned about Kaggle and saying that I'm a Kaggle Grandmaster. So Kaggle, for the ones who are not aware, which I'm sure will be very less, Kaggle is a data science platform which hosts machine learning competitions. It hosts a number of data sets and also discussions. And so here people from all over the world, they come here and they compete, they collaborate, they share their knowledge. So I'm a grandmaster in one of the categories, and that's notebooks. But fortunately for me, H2O has a lot of grandmasters who are actually amongst like the top 10 in the world in the competition category. And I'm very lucky to work with them, and I get to learn a lot from them. And this is a very nice world map which actually depicts all of them, and it shows how global the nature of the companies and people are located. So working closely with them gives you a lot of insight into machine learning and how to approach machine learning and data science. And so one of the reasons why I encourage Kaggle is because you get to interact with so many different people. So if you are on Kaggle, make sure that you sort of create a healthy relationship with the pros in this area. This will definitely help in your learning curve. So getting back to Python. I stumbled upon this great line by Peter Norvig, who happens to be the Google's research director. And these are his wordings for Python. And he says that Python has been an integral part of Google, of course, since the beginning. And this has continued over the years. And he says that today, there are like dozens of Google engineers who are using Python, and this number is going to go up. And for this rapid increase in the usage of Python can also be attributed to the fact that a lot of it is today being used in research purposes for AI and data science. And this makes it one of the most sought after language. And if you are learning about this language, I think you are in a very good situation, because chances are that the requirement for this language is going to grow up manyfold in the coming years. Just to start and just to give you an idea about the possibilities of using Python in artificial intelligence, I'll just quickly show you how there's this one project where probably Python is being used for creating music. And I'll just quickly show you in a real-time scenario. So this is a pre-written code. I won't go through the code. I just like to tell you that this is a music. This is a piece of note that is sort of created by a code. And this is a pre-trained model and has been trained on like 10,000 hours of piano recordings from YouTube. And this shows you the possibility of using AI today. So if you can see, this is just a small patch of music that was generated. And then what we did was we chose a priming sequence. So here it was C major, and this was added to it. And then what we did was we added some melody to it. And here I've chosen Mary Had a Little Lamb. You can even choose yours. And so this project of creating music right from your Python environment is completely blows your mind. I will get back to what this is and which company is today involved in it. But this is just to set the pace of showing the possibilities, immense possibilities that coding in Python can bring. And this is written in Python, of course. So when we talk about machine learning, I always begin by just telling people that, AI, machine learning, deep learning, all these three words are used interchangeably and a lot. I mean, every day you are going to hear on LinkedIn thousands of posts. They're tagged hashtag AI, hashtag artificial intelligence, hashtag deep learning. But it's very important for us to understand that there is a distinction between all three. So if you look at artificial intelligence, it is this big umbrella. And this is a subfield of computer science. And this consists of a collection of different technologies. And the idea of using so many technologies is to enable machines to act with human-like intelligence. And one of the way in which it is achieved is through machine learning. So machine learning is a subfield of artificial intelligence, and that enables machine through a variety of algorithms to learn from the past data to predict the future. And deep learning is when you use neural nets. So a very important thing to understand is that machine learning is a part of artificial intelligence. It's an important part, but it's not the only one. So here is that distinction. So of course, I know these terms are used interchangeably, but if you want to be very specific, both these terms, so it's like artificial intelligence is the superset and machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. So now having set the tone straight about what AI is, what ML is, it's also important to see how ML differs from the traditional programming. And of course, this is PyConf, and I assume, and I of course know also that a lot of Python developers who are watching this presentation and the conference. So I'll just like to quickly draw a differentiation between both of them. So what happens in conventional programming and machine learning? So both of them have programs. So in conventional programming, what we do is we pass on some data and we also pass on some rules. So for example, we have to add two numbers. So we're going to pass in two numbers, A and B, and the rule will be to add them and we'll get an output. However, not all the problems, they can be solved with rules because there might be some variation in data, there might be some variation in input variables, or the problem can be also complex. And so what machine learning does is we pass in the data, lots and lots of it, and we also pass in the output. So something that we want to predict is also passed on to the program. So now the program has the input, has the data, and now its job is to figure out the rules. And that's machine learning. And once it's figured out the rules, it is going to use those rules on a new set of data to predict the output for that. So that's typically machine learning. So the machine has to find patterns in the data, and it sort of creates some patterns and identifies them in the data, and then it creates its own rules. And this is what I mean by not being explicitly programmed. So for instance, a very famous example, a toy example that is used in machine learning or deep learning is you are giving two pictures to the computer, and the computer has to identify whether the picture belongs to a cat or a dog. And so what we do is we pass on lots and lots of images of cats and dogs, and over a period of time, the computer starts to recognize patterns. So it could be the color, or could be the position of the ears, the position of the eyes, and so on. And then when you'll give it a new picture, it will give you the probability whether it's a dog or a cat. And all this, what I'm saying, has become so mainstream using deep learning, using machine learning. And of course, you require coding for this. And this is where Python comes into play. So if you look at Python's popularity over the years, and it's not we only use Python for machine learning. Over the years, if you'll see, a wide range of programming languages have been used. And a lot of environments have been used, no-code environments also. However, as a general purpose language, Python stands apart. And it has also seen a tremendous growth and acceptance in the scientific community. And especially during the last decade, this usage of Python has increased manifold. And so most recent machine learning and deep learning libraries today are in Python. And so if you look at this, this is the popularity of each programming language based on their share of tutorial searches on Google. And you can see that Python stands at the top. Looking from an AI perspective, this is a recent KD Nuggets poll. So KD Nuggets is a data science website where you have a lot of blogs and also hold certain competitions. So they conducted this poll, and for 2019, and where they found was Python leads the 11 top data science machine learning platforms. So you can see Python on the left-hand side, its share in 2009. It's about 65.8%. And the top analytics and data science machine learning software from 2017 to 19 is again Python. All right. So we know that Python is being used to such a large extent. Let's now look at what are the possible reasons which have made this possible. And I think everybody knows the reasons for any language to be usable, to be, you could say, more famous among the masses, has to have these 5 important criteria. Open source, so that it's freely available for anybody to use it. You don't have to pay for this. It's a general purpose language. Not only it's used for web development, it could be used for a plethora of purposes. It's highly readable, and that really makes a lot of difference, because data science is a very diverse field, and as much as you require good coders and programmers, you also require people with a good and a strong domain experience. By this, I mean that if you are creating an AI product for a healthcare, for instance, you would definitely want people with a background in medicine. You want, if you're creating a cancer detecting algorithm or an app, you would want a radiologist, oncologist on the team. Now, they might not have a programming background, but of course they are open to learn. And so any language which has a high or a steep learning curve will definitely make it impossible, because it's going to take years to actually master that language. And Python does it very efficiently in very less time. Again, so I've touched upon easy to learn. And even though it's easy to learn, it doesn't compromise, on maybe and also is able to harness the power of system level programming languages when necessary. A lot of libraries are available for data science. And finally, the excellent community around it, which is, I think, a most important factor for the usage or the popularity of any tool, be it a programming language or any other tool. So there is this paper and from Sebastian Rushka, and he'd written, the paper itself is called Machine Learning Python, Main Developments and Technology Trends in Data Science, Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence. I highly encourage you all to read it. It's a big 45 pages paper. A very important aspect from what I inferred from the paper was that Python continues to be the most preferred language for scientific computing and data science and machine learning, and boosting both performance and productivity because it enables the use of low-level libraries and clean high-level APIs. And that's the central part of it, which makes it different from the other languages like C, C++, and Java, especially in data science. So we did go over the 5 main points of why Python is so popular. Now let's just go a little deeper into them and understand, so what are the different libraries which people use, or probably what is the scientific stack in data science, and what sort of libraries are used for end-to-end machine learning. So I have shown you a lot of graphs here, but that's because, it's very easy to judge and see when you look at graphs than if I would have shown you numbers, and that's the power of visualization. So there was a very recent survey on the state of developer ecosystems by JetBrains, and they conduct the survey every year annually. And so the question there was, what do you use Python for? And interestingly, for 2 years, like in 2019, Python, so data analysis actually pivoted even the web development. In 2020, it came a close second, but you'll closely see that data analysis and machine learning together make the major chunk of the usage of Python. And that's great because the more people use Python for data science, more developments will happen in this area. There'll be more open source libraries, and even big companies like Google and Facebook will also open source their technologies. And in a way, this would lead to democratization of machine learning so that everybody will have access to state of the art. So talking about the libraries. So a great choice of library for any work that we do is to have something which has a lot of functions inbuilt and easier to use. So what a library typically is, I'm sure most of you already know it, but a library is just a module of a group or a group of modules. So they include a pre-written piece of code, and that does a desired operation or with the desired functionality. So with the modules or the libraries, it's very easy to just import them, and instead of having to write that entire thing from scratch. Say we have a library for image recognition, so we can just import that library, and yes, that does the work, instead of us having to write the entire code from scratch. And Python has like plethora of such libraries. And so in Python, we have libraries for numerical computing, for data analysis, for statistical analysis, visualization, and machine learning. And this together constitutes the end-to-end machine learning pipeline. So you have a library, and not a single library, but multiple libraries for all of them. And so quickly looking at this standard Python ecosystem. So you will see for data analysis or wrangling the data, cleaning the data, we have Pandas. And then once you clean the data, then you'll have algorithms which has a number of algorithms for machine learning. And so we have a Scikitlearn library for that. So Scikitlearn library has a lot of algorithms for multiple things. And then there's a graph analytics. So there's a library called Network X in Python. For deep learning, we have, again, a lot of libraries. We have PyTorch, we have TensorFlow, MXNet. And then for visualization, there's an entire stack called PyViz. So right from data preparation to model training to visualization, all of them can be achieved just using Python libraries. And this is amazing because you don't have to switch between languages. Once you've got a hang of Python, you can just continue your entire research development and functioning only in Python. Just looking at the few libraries that I mentioned. So the library that I mentioned for data analytics is Pandas. And Pandas is a data frame object, so for data manipulation. So the first thing you do in a machine learning project is to ingest the data. And the data might be in very different formats. There could be CSV file, there could be Excel, and a lot of different formats. So Pandas has this ability to import the data set into your working environment. And once you have the data with you, you can look at the data, you can clean the data, you can pre-process the data, standardize, merge, join, reshape. And all these things are available in this Pandas library. So you have a lot of functions, so you just need to import Pandas, and then rest of it, you can use different functionalities which are available in Pandas. And just a fun fact, now why does the name Pandas come? Of course, whenever we mention Pandas, we, especially when people write blogs of Pandas, the picture that they associate it is with a panda, the animal. The name Panda is there because this library was actually developed in the financial modeling. And so it contains a lot of tools, if you notice, like it has tools for working with dates, date time, and time series or time indexed data. So this name pandas has been derived from the word panel data. So it takes the first two. From panel it takes pan, and from data it takes da. And that's an econometrics term. And that's for, so panel data are those data sets which include observations of multiple time periods. You could say time series data. So the name of pandas actually comes from panel data. But yes, because pandas also looks cool as a name, and we can also associate it with the animal. Hence, it's used so much there. So once we have the data, we've cleansed the data, normalized the data. And so I think now it's time when we can start our machine learning process. And so machine learning process will be done with the help of a lot of statistical algorithms. And then Scikit-learn comes into the picture. So Scikit-learn today has become the industry standard Python library for feature engineering and classical machine learning modeling on small to medium-sized data sets. One of the primary reasons is it's pretty clean, consistent, and has a very intuitive API. And a lot of other libraries also follow the same structure, so that makes it pretty easy. And Scikit-learn has a lot of algorithms. You have algorithms for clustering, for classification, so both for supervised and unsupervised, for text classification also. So this is a complete suite, and I think everybody who starts machine learning begins with Scikit-learn itself. So this is the classical machine learning. So when you want to go a step ahead from classical machine learning, say you have problems of image, you have problems of text, audio. So that time, for such questions, you would want to use the deep learning technologies. And Python as a language also has access to those libraries too. The few names which come to mind directly are TensorFlow. So TensorFlow is used, it's an end-to-end open source machine learning platform from Google. So this is a library which is created by Google, and then they open sourced it, and now it is being used today immensely by the community around. And it's used for setting up, training, and utilizing the artificial neural networks. And TensorFlow has this amazing community behind it. And again, because there's a strong community behind it, there's a big company behind it, a lot of research is happening in this place, and that's good for everybody. Another deep learning library, which is pretty simple to use, is Keras. And Keras essentially is built on top of TensorFlow 2.0. So again, it's again compatible with CPU, it's compatible with GPU, so that makes it again, and even TPUs. And it allows fast calculations and again prototyping as it uses the GPU in addition to CPU. So now if you have a large amount of data and you want to use GPU, you don't have to make any different arrangements. The same libraries make it possible to use them either with the CPU or the GPU. PyTorch. So PyTorch is again another open source library, and it's based on the Torch library, and it's actually developed by the Facebook AI Research Lab. And so like TensorFlow has been developed by Google, PyTorch by Facebook. And so you see how all the big players are coming in this field, and they're sort of open sourcing all their products and the state-of-the-art libraries and even researchers. And this is really, so this is a great time to be involved in the research and data science, because you have access to such great products, state-of-the-art mechanisms and machine learning algorithms by the companies who are putting in dollars and hundreds and thousands of dollars in the research. So, we started with Pandas, then we saw a few libraries which help in machine learning and deep learning. Python also has this wonderful visualization ecosystem, and you have libraries like Matplotlib, Seaborn, Bokeh, which sort of help to sort of visualize your entire data sets. And in fact, Matplotlib is also called the grandfather of the libraries, because it was one of the most, it was it started quite early, and a lot of other libraries, the Seaborn, they all are based on Matplotlib. And you can generate a lot of plots, histograms, scatter plots, error charts, bar plots with Matplotlib. And the best part is it also integrates seamlessly with Pandas. And you can even create some more sophisticated visualizations. So if you have a data set and you're starting to learn Python, you can start with Python basics of it, and then you can jump into how to use these libraries. And this is going to help you learn the library, master it, as well as use it for your day-to-day work. Talking about text, so today, mostly for text, we use deep learning technologies, but Python, there's also a wonderful tool in Python called NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit. So that's used for computational linguistics, natural language recognition and processing. And it's a wonderful tool. So if you are just starting out with text, NLTK is a great library to start. And the only thing that we've left is images. And fortunately, Python also has a library called Scikitlearn for image processing. And so the underlying idea why I'm showing you all these libraries, and of course there are many more, is that these libraries are in Python, and hence they make the entire machine learning process faster. So this was the first point that we touched upon, that Python provides a lot of libraries for data science. And by mastering all these libraries or having an idea about these libraries is pretty much what the entire data science and AI system is about. The next important aspect is the low barrier to entry. Now, if you were a person who has very less experience in coding, you're just starting out and you are asked to write hello. And so if you can see, there are 3 ways of writing hello in 3 different languages, Python, C, and Java. And so which one would you select? Of course, if you want to be something simple, you want to write something simple, you're going to choose Python. And pretty much this is the reason. And I also mentioned, like, a lot of domain experts are also coming into the field of data science to leverage their researches. For them, it just makes sense to start something with a library that is simple, but at the same time, is also good computationally. So Python programming language, it just resembles our everyday English sentences. And that makes the process of learning the language very, very fast. And you can also work with complex systems and so on. And again, there's a lot of documentation available. And the best part of Python documentation is it is targeted towards beginners as much as it is targeted towards the pros. So if you are a complete beginner, and by reading the documentation itself, you can start learning Python very easily. So the third reason is that it runs practically on every platform. So if you are working on a Mac, you can also work on Windows, you can also work on Unix, Ubuntu. So it works on pretty much every platform. So you don't have to know the basics of the platform to be able to use Python. Python is like write once, run anywhere. So then you don't have to decide the OS. And as a data scientist, you can use that time to focus on your research part. Readability. So by using Python, you also get access to some wonderful resources. And one of them is Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab, which is like the next version of Jupyter Notebook. So it's an IDE, Python IDE, but it's interactive shell. And so it has a lot of other features like testing, debugging, and auto code completion, and which helps to just facilitates the work process. Now, it might not be such a good idea probably for some if you are using it for developmental purposes. But if you are using Python for, say, teaching or probably visualizations or doing some research, that time Jupyter Notebooks are pretty handy. And it is used, I think, today by a lot of people in the scientific community, and even companies like Netflix. They also wrote a blog about how they use Jupyter Notebooks. in their end-to-end ecosystem. So having the knowledge of Python will make it possible for you to use such tools also. And again, the thing that I'm saying again and again about the wonderful community. So there was this survey which was done by GitHub, the state of the Octoverse 2020. And so there's a line in that survey, the main driving force behind Python's growth is the speedily expanding community of data science professionals and hobbyists. And it's pretty interesting to note that a lot of data scientists are today are self-learners, and a lot of them do it as a hobby rather than as a profession. So this sort of diversifies the entire area of Python. So you have people with different backgrounds. There are people who are PhDs and researchers in big universities, and there are also undergraduates and school children who are using Python in data science. And if you were to look at even Kaggle, there's a Kaggle grandmaster who became a grandmaster at the age of 17 and in high school, and there's one from India itself. So this shows that Python has made it possible for not only researchers or not only people with a computer science background, but even kids at school. So this is really, really heartening. So it's always very helpful when there's a strong community behind any language or any tool for that matter. So Python is an open source, again, language, which means that there are a bunch of resources which are like open for programmers from beginners and ending with pros. And apart from that, there are a lot of communities and developer forums where people interact with each other and, sort of create a good relationship and good vibe, which in the end helps in the development of any language. And so if you talk about popularity, the growth is increasing, and seeing the current trend of the people who are interested in the field of data science and AI, I think this is going to soar again, and the popularity is on the rise, and it will go. Just we have to make sure that we don't only learn from it, but we also keep contributing to it. And conferences like PyConf and PyCon are a great way to come and interact with other Pythonistas, Pythoneers, and help in the development of this wonderful language. So in this next part of my presentation, and of course the presentation is now coming to an end, I'll quickly show you some of the useful open source machine learning projects in Python. And if you remember, I did show you in the beginning of how music was also created. And so we're just going to see a few nice things that have been created by companies, and the companies which are actually renowned in the space of AI and ML. So Michelangelo is a platform. So it's a platform by Uber. So Uber has developed an ML platform called Michelangelo PyML, and using Python. And they use it for their online and offline productions, and of course use it to predict. And so the main idea is to actually predict the traffic and their cabs, and they use it for day-to-day tasks. So Michelangelo was a great platform which was end-to-end complete machine learning by Uber, and since it was created in Python, this really showed how you could create something from creation to research to production just based on Python. Netflix. So again, Python is used by Netflix also, and they've time and again said, they also have a blog on Medium where they said how they were using Python for creating recommendations and suggesting to people things like, you've seen this, so you might like this, or even suggesting playlists. And they also showed how they used Jupyter notebooks for the current research and current work. Facebook. So Facebook's are the creators of PyTorch, and Python is again used by the social media network Facebook also, right from production engineering to infrastructure management and even operational automation. And one product that they've created, and then they open sourced it, is called Tornado. So what they did was to meet their, the critical user demand for real-time updates. Of course, you know that by Facebook, of course, you need to know about the real-time updates there. So first they acquired, and then they implemented the Python-derived framework called Tornado, and then they open sourced it. And so this Tornado actually handles the web traffic, extensive web traffic with speed. So this provides users with a real-time experience. So this is one example where they're using a product based in Python to sort of manage the excessive amounts of data. And Google. So of course, Google are the creators of TensorFlow and Keras, and Python is used in Google as much as possible for data analysis, for testing, monitoring, automation, even predictive analytics. And a lot of research is going on behind a lot of different state-of-the-art algorithms. And the best part is that they're open sourcing all of them, which is good for us. So I just want to quickly quote Jack Jansen, who sort of said a very good thing about Python, and which I personally found it when I started learning Python. He said that Python is a truly wonderful language, and when somebody comes up with a good idea, it takes about 1 minute and 5 lines to program something that almost does that you want, and that's so true. And that's also true in the perspective of data science. So if you just have some data sets and you want to quickly create a baseline model, it just takes about 5 to 6 lines of code using, of course, the libraries. So you just import them. And yes, it gets the work done. Of course, you're going to refine them over time. But the best part is you get a baseline. And baseline you get quickly, instead of delving into it or spending about years or weeks onto it. And that's a great part of Python. And so coming back to the music that we heard, so that's Magenta, and that is also a Google project, and it's called Music and Art Generation with Machine Intelligence. It's created in Python, and it's actually a research project, actually. So it explores the role of machine learning in the process of creating art and music. And there are a bunch of other such interesting projects which are made in Python, which are created by the Google Brain team. And it's all open sourced. All demos are available. You should go and try them out, and probably you would want to create something of your own. And these are just about how you can use artificial intelligence in something that you as humans do, like speech, visual interpretation, art, etc. And all this are available on GitHub for free. So that was all from my side. I just wanted to appreciate the entire Python community and the developers and the people who are working behind the language, so that for us as data scientists, they have created such wonderful libraries and resources which we can use and then apply in machine learning, and hopefully use machine learning for good. So thank you, and thank you, PyConf, for having me here. And I'm open to questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Parul. I think that was a very informative session. And I think, as always, as you mentioned, there have been more and more use cases coming through as an NVC in machine learning and data science. So it's created its own genre of, Pythonistas, separate from the core group. So there's, typically you see more healthy interaction between the core group and the machine learning and data science Pythonistas around, okay, which use cases work best, right? So we do have a few questions for you in the Q&A section. I'll start off with, I think, a question that I really like the most. So Sandeep Srivastava, he asks, I've seen women taking up and thriving in data science roles. Do you have any tips and learnings that he could share with his 2 daughters to encourage them to take data science?
Yes, great question. Actually, you hardly get such questions. I personally, I believe that programming learning as a hobby probably it's even great for females. It's of course it's great for everybody. For why for females? Because if I were to tell you from my own experience, when I was working before I came into the data science domain, I used to travel about 50 kilometers, because my job was such that I could not work from home. And there has been this sudden shift as soon as I changed to programming. I can work from anywhere in the world. And as a mother, this gives me time to take care of my son. This gives me time to interact with my family. And I also enjoy what I do. So I would always tell people to encourage their girls more to learn coding and programming. It's so wonderful. And the number of entrepreneurs that are sort of coming out, I think programming has been the prime factor which is doing that, and this just changes the way. So today also I encourage people, so even if you don't work for companies, you can create your own companies. So you don't have to push your children towards machine learning specifically or data science. Just show them the path towards coding in a nice way. Code.org is a free platform for kids, and then they'll figure it out themselves. So that's something I like to tell for everybody, that for especially girls, programming is such a strengthening thing in the life, which has changed mine, and I of course believe it can change others too.
Absolutely. Let them create their own paths, right? Their own use cases, need not work with the same use cases all the time. Great, thanks. So one question from Akash that I see is, I've set my eyes on doing research in the field of healthcare and disease detection and preventive measures. Do you have some insights on how we can approach that?
So yes, I think healthcare today is one of the most thriving sectors where artificial intelligence is being used. And of course, in a country like India, this does make a lot of sense because we are sitting on a lot of data. We as a country are generating like humongous amount of data, but we might not be using it so much. So healthcare is something which is needed, and there are a lot of use cases out there. So if you're really interested in healthcare, probably like disease detection, you said, the first thing would be to start collecting the data. Google worked on this glaucoma study, where they use machine learning to identify, which people are more prone to getting glaucoma. Interestingly, the data, most of them was used from India. So if we can go out and collect the data, collect good data, healthy data, firstly from India itself, not only that will help, of course, in the research, but what today is happening is we are using the data generated by the Western world, and which may not suit towards India. India is a very different country. So for us, the first thing would be we should start collecting data, local data. Then I think we could start on with the next step.
Absolutely. And I think the example that you quoted, I think since Telangana state is, they are celebrating 2020 as Year of AI. And I think one of the use cases was from the LV Prasad Eye Institute. And I think that was the use case, where, they were collecting data for glaucoma patients to early detection of glaucoma.
Yeah, early detection, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So here, the next question is around the language, right? So there was one question around Julia. So we see that Julia is taking up more, limelight and compared to Python. There is a buzz around it, right? What are your thoughts?
So, see, I think new languages are going to come, and it's always good because what lacks in one language, then the other language tries to put them up. But what I would suggest is, I would say from a data scientist perspective, is that we should pick up a tool that we are comfortable in, and then we should stick to that if it's serving a purpose. Because more of our focus should be using that tool and then applying it on the research or the problem at hand. Because there'll be new languages. So there are people who are still working in C, C++, and of course we need them. We need people in Java, and similarly. But if you are comfortable in one language, it's good to stick with that. But of course, if you want to experiment and you want to explore, it's always good to look at different languages also. But I could speak from a data science perspective, and I don't like to experiment much because, as I told you, there's so many libraries which are again dependent upon Python. If you see a new language, to create that sort of an ecosystem will definitely take years.
Absolutely. And I think building up that community aspect also is something that is also important for any programming language, and Python has
I
done
think
that.
the community, it's so interesting to see that not only for languages, it's absolutely essential for any product, so to say. I'll just quickly give an example. Samsung actually, so all of them, they use Android, Samsung and Oppo and Redmi, Realme. So Samsung also came with its own OS called Tizen, and it didn't work out. They had to close the entire thing because they could not get community behind that. People did not create apps, they didn't have enough apps, and so they had to close it because then you couldn't compete with Android. So that's the problem. The communities has become such an important and vital pillar that the whole ecosystem or the success of any project actually depends upon the community behind it.
Absolutely. And the contribution also, keeping it updated, I think that becomes
Yes.
very important. Yeah. All right. And I think we'll take one more question from Anand Kopparapu. So he asks, sometimes it feels that the learning process is never ending. Having a mentor would help in such scenario. So do you have any available resources from a mentorship point of view that can help, someone who's starting their learning process or in the process of learning and feel that, okay, where do I stop?
Yeah, so yes, so for machine learning, I think people started young and then they're still researching and they're still learning, and that's a great question. I think yes, mentorship does help, and I think it's very essential to find a good mentor, as in a mentor who doesn't spoon feed you completely but just shows you the path. If you talk about females, we at WICDS have recently launched this program in collaboration with the Andhra Pradesh government, where we are providing mentorship to females. But in the future, as soon as our organization increases, we are looking at mentorship for the entire community, for males as well. So hopefully next year, if our organization continues to grow at such a pace, we definitely have this in mind.
And what are your thoughts around the degrees, having a formal education in data science? Because I think one question from Jophine says that, for example, IIT Madras introduced a recent BSc program in data science. Will having an official degree be an advantage?
So, see, there are like multiple parts to it. So, if you want to go into research field and you want to work under professors and you want to do some research based on some AI, so then you can get enrolled in a master's or a PhD program, and you can use the lab and the equipments there, because they have access to GPUs, especially IIT Madras. I think they have access to some good GPUs from NVIDIA. If you talk about jobs, will that get you a job? That's a very different thing. So if you have seen when you apply for jobs today, people don't ask you your degree. They give you some take home assignments and ask you to solve it, and then it doesn't really matter. More so because data science is more about a self-learning thing, because things are getting outdated so easily. If you talk about the language domain, LSTMs were the state of the art just years back, and now the transformer models which have transformed. So a very important aspect to stay in this field is to keep learning, relearning, and experimenting. And for that, having a degree doesn't harm, but that doesn't just will give you the surety of a job. So you can use the degree if you think it's very difficult for you to study on your own. So that just helps you, because you have this curriculum set. But then finding a job will be entirely up to you, and how much you can, answer well, or how much experience you've gained.
Absolutely. And I was also just talking to someone yesterday at the conference doing that speed networking part. And I think he mentioned that we are already at a stage where we are maintaining legacy ML code. right? ML we feel that ML is almost so recent, but there are scenarios where the technology has changed so fast that we are already maintaining legacy ML code, like a mainframe system, right? So that's the pace at which things are
Things are
changing.
changing. And it
Absolutely.
won't be possible for even institutions to keep pace with that. They just cannot change their curriculum over three
Curriculum.
months or 6 months. So that's also a thing.
Absolutely. All right. So I think those were most of the questions that we have. And if you have any links for the slides and for your talk,
Yes, I
feel
share
free
my
to.
slides. I share them with all of you. You can just go back to them in your free time.
All right. So I think that's all we have time for questions today, folks. So we do have the Zulip chat topic. So please head out there. So Parul will be available there if you have more questions. So looking forward for the next session. And again, Parul, thank you for the keynote. Uh, feel free to interact with the other attendees.
Thank you, Snehit, and thank you, PyCon, for having me. And yes, I'll see you all in the Zulip chat.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye bye.